Dear Americans and people from Russia and Ukraine and the rest of the countries of the human species body of individual bodies, we are in a semi-ancient trap per a semi-ancient method. Slash S with all the slash as our nature, as criminal, insidious natures of positive and negative treatments, or we are sensed, including if we are a majority of people, including if and when voices of a unified countries. Their fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature are still collusion slash S with the hyper-foreign that effectively employed all wrongly as collusions with itself, blaming things like criminal foreign influences for things that were really, for example, so to speak, hyper-criminally foreign influenced, like that which had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, a breaching method taught American campuses and the teachers of them through the same campuses. They were child abused and abused as adults. Otherwise, they were sensed. This breaching method has everyone sensing for the hyper-foreign. So I'll donate, for example, lyrics for a Ukraine song for Russia and Ukraine and America and the rest of the species body. Because we can make hyper positives out of negatives. And where, for example, where there are physical threats on countries and other natures of them that are invisible but still discernible, it comes with this, which is hyper invisible but still discernible. Thank God, though, too. Everyone had self-valued roles. With the same mistakes exploited by the breaching that we could observe this at the same time. Everyone was shown, and it is shown by the breaching that they have to force, trick, hurt, or persuade people to blame other things, others, or selves. For things that America's founders, the only one we know the name of, James Madison, by the way, for things that they told us to blame in the breaching method. The one that forced James Madison and his plan and the founders that leveraged it, the means to get people at key locations inside of more than 13 colonies, forced, tricked, and hurt, and persuaded to break the rules, not just of the internationally monitored conversations, again, with even slavery entrenched, and the syntax relativity of it. We have Black people's rights of lives and nature communicating with this every day since our founding. Still, it is communicated through the breaching method, the way it tells everyone to speak about it, trains them. How are you? My name is Anthony Wall, but Romulus, we all must be Romulus together. This is Romulus and Remus is more probably and more practically about science that goes with the pantheism, that goes with the republic for which we stand in the campus's Marcia system. There's a park in Detroit. I read in an encyclopedia. There's the Campus Marcius is the name of it. See, but no one remembers their history properly because a hyper-foreign showed everyone how to speak about history. It is recorded, and that's hyper-evidential. But at the same time, all sides of criminal and civil cases and the news and names that next to all natures of crime scenes and campuses and ground differences, the difference of at or next to things, which is why, too, the side entrances to parks. They have everyone record the data collection is criminally foreign influence that country's A through Z. Here, Anthony, Maxine, how are you? So this is how we can heal the world, by making hyper positives out of negatives and making sure that we're not making criminal insidious natures of positives out of negatives. Like criminal insidious natures of peace. Nature has been showing us this, and our founders left declassified for their actual communications. For us to appreciate in other words, their communication is distinct from what they said. Because there was a forced torture, extortion, slavery method fact, chiefly nature-wise, therefore physically, against everyone non-distinctly. In fact, it was sickly distinctly against everyone. To use functional, everyone with their syntax sensing for the breaching method, that other things, others were selves are blamed rather than, and no one would bring up in value what nature was showing about how non-distinctly everyone was victim of it at the same time. All exceptions that appeared to be people were about, but they were already fighting for, common sense or T-tax. That was all. It had everyone layers of roles against collusions syntactically against themselves and others that no one wanted. But it was a breaching method that measured and maintained everyone collusions too. And the difference of the countries individually grouped or together involved with that, or the overt criminal enterprises and the terrorists that were only allowed to be manifest, increasingly being framed too, and forced to self-value collusion /S with the use of location /S, that even the names of the people of the sciences still have self-valued roles with. They have self-valued roles sensing for the breaching method anybody who starts speaking for George Washington's extortion, honestly, which would have brought up how James Madison's plan was to counter-extort everyone and to force the Declaration of Independence and to force the Constitutional Convention and to force what enabled the Civil War to be used to force roles with the slavery, torture, extortion method, northern colonies and southern colonies, and still northern states and southern states having been all roles with it. Therefore, all rules were syntactically hurting other people, incapable of a unity or of a nature of independence, capable of defending that, and only allowed formal subject treatments, locations, and of defending and of affording to be, let alone to protract, short words with convictions proper regarding nature. Would have revealed too, nature is hypernated pure, and it is showing us the difference between president and chief is that they don't juxtapose, but they are both increasingly valued. But we have been using systems tactically ulterior from the Constitution unabridged, which appreciates nature and how nature uses. See, a special difference. Nature shows us that Earth, we have a special difference. And we could, and it is generating all group differences. What about the Epstein list? Well, I obviously don't know Epstein, but see how they make allegations. The former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has collusion /S with a bunch of boyfriends of people that might be with intelligence, like with stripper locations, per them, next to Central Connecticut State University, which also has a bunch of families and intimate ties to courts, like New Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts and the Connecticut District Court before the World Trade Center attack. They had collusions. They had affected requests to help from me. And I didn't respond how I was going to accommodate that, because also it was halfway dishonest, and it was involved with people since I was a kid, involved with a method that plants evidences on all sides of people's houses and all sides of theirs, and it sustains this. It's with multiple retired police chiefs and their intimate ties and people tied intimately to their family, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, foreign and domestic medical families, putting fake transcripts in databases, and telling people behind their backs that they had conversations with people that never were. And then when they get forced into like a mental evaluation at hospitals, they put fake conversations. Like a Leahy family has rules with names next to the campuses too, involved with various natures of organized crimes, with various judges and prosecutors and victims advocates involved, also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, mail crimes, wire crimes, medicines crimes, legal crimes, and methods of them, plural, per method. These are people involved with Connecticut's roles with the World Trade Center attack. The FBI and Connecticut Police Departments, they have collusion/S with the same house, who has like some Mendez police and people tied to them have rules putting fake ties to kids at the police station too, pretended into databases, fake transcripts. A Chris Walters I only know seeking me out to make confessions and recorded demonstrations, trying to make fake exceptions to increasingly he said him and my neighbors with the police departments, they confessed that there are people named Lombardo. And that's also recorded. People with the name Lombardo are also involved with the intelligence next to Hartford Hospital. A bunch of people next to Hartford Hospital, houses and businesses, and along that Franklin Avenue and Wethersfield Avenue. Through time, increasingly have collusion/S with a bunch of ties between names involved with the ones that were timed right outside my hotel the night before the World Trade Center attack. A Scalora, tied to a Scalora with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and some Wethersfield police and police departments intercities with them switching names and on off campuses. Involved further, too, with proven child abusers, leaders of kids first forest. See, it's easy for people to pretend passion. Oh, I'm for the kids. They're forcing collusion/S with the same types of things. Like victims advocates have roles with sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, wire crime methods, whole federal evidences crime methods. A whole bunch of and uses of it manifest at corners of streets and exceptions relative to how nature shows us that everyone has been using exceptions and exception nature tactical ulterior from how nature does and from how our founders communicated for us to appreciate the Constitution unabridged in our original abridgments. But we have their words interpreted, leaving out how they were everyone's words were measured and maintained an extent of collusion. Otherwise, they were sensed through their own, as the human species body's own individual body of individual bodies, no longer capable of affording anyone with short words unabridged, having to self-value to get away with it too. Collusion/yes with really what they have a shell game with the people countering sexual narratives and of doctors. There are doctors who are involved with identity thefts, with foreign domestic, with triages, which are medical campuses, involved also with the intelligence with them. The interagencies, they have roles with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes and relative delusions that we can discern. I'm going to show you first with the ancient snow people. For example, there is that one identity of value progression that is generating all group differences. And when we are not using its system, though, it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, and with forced a special difference transfer. Earth has a special difference, and the rest of the species bodies of individual bodies, they have no criminal foreign influences / hyper criminal foreign influences, but not per the way they define such things. To their definitions, they're fighting only to defend their definitions and uses of it in collusions, like with you know, with you know, with I forgot what point I was going to make, but in other words, the plan to have a hyper summit, we have to admit there are industries. So I brought forced negotiations between these countries. I didn't know why, but these are also people who got involved with the Dean Judd and his kids. I never had a word of conversation with him or his kid. They're involved with sequence ships and planting evidences with foreign and domestic military and people from Wethersfield into Branch. This is also halfway. They confess things they don't even realize. This breaching method had people, had countries, operators, The names of countries can only be operated by locations, areas, and states everywhere the human species body is. It measured and maintained. People needing to blame other things, others, or selves, syntactically and then physically to defend that, things that it caused them to need to react to exactly and properly the way it wanted to need. And the counters to that, more and more, it propagated everyone, self-cultivated. Defenses of fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature as criminal insidiousness nature, / hyper-criminal insidiousness nature. I am not a lawyer, but so to speak, because we have black people's rights of eyes as means to discern, hyper-evidentially recorded how lawyers all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch names, their families, their conjunctions to them, the news at the same time, and the intelligence, foreign and domestic, has actually shared and directed to hide such. See, such truths were used to keep equality of fact, human nature as criminal insidiousness nature, / hyper-criminal insidiousness nature as collusion / s. They're taking records on people through people that are making confessions and pretending others simultaneously. Intercampuses through time. A bunch of people from Wethersfield had collusions with the World Trade Center attack. And they'll tell you they only know me when they were influenced to time where I was going to be and make fake exceptions. And some of them, like a Joshua Julian, on the Facebook page of a principal child abuser's campus. And I went to that campus, and a Rick Cianfaglione and other doctors recorded how, and like people involved with a boyfriend reportedly of a daughter of that principal when I was there. You know, she was abused with organized crimes roles, with foreign and domestic intelligence, the branch families, intelligence, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, names next to body dumping spots, increasingly getting brought in. People in my 6th grade class have people from Russia and people from Ukraine involved, and this is in Wethersfield, the same school with multiple. I mean, with that child abusers from other cities had roles with a girl who was in my 6th grade class, who was a teacher, one of the teachers further involved with the principal upskirt nature and whiting forensics when I was a kid, and now more and more. They have collusions with predicate acts with the same house / s, with multiple police departments forging police fake conversations and ties to me since I was a kid, fake evidences, then lying about pretending people making, attacking police. They're the ones that brought all into it. In other words, and the differences between the police collusion, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, even if they're just undercover pretending to be that. They have syntax collusion / s. You guys have other things, others, or selves. Blame for what our founders told us to blame on a human fact, human nature breaching method. That's what their communications demonstrates to us. That's how they get away with having, or the founders owned slaves. What do you know about history? They're using truths for lies. And they're sensing for the breaching method. Self-valued roles with the educators. Collusions with a breaching method. Forcing other things, others, ourselves, things that we're supposed to blame on the breaching method. That which had slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies. Sickly distinctly, but non-distinctly too. It had functional, how that even though that hurts everyone was non-distinctly the victim of the same thing, just like we are now. But no one appreciates it that way. No one can. Because at the same time, the differences of the guilt, even when they don't even know them, the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And terrorists, they have the same like uses of the word. It's easy to discern what their uses and their value treatments by the words extremism and radical. See, what's radical / hyper-radical, we could check. And is only capable of staying more and more positive, also positive onto itself. Here it makes evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere come. especially where in some differentially where we are fact human nature, or where we are physics, but increasingly equally here, but as or it forces our value from here as forced space nature transfer, which is more probably and practically what Leaf of Hadith is about, forced space nature transfer, nature being an aspect of our identity, or that of any identity that has where there's a semi-nature relationship that all parts of every identity have to their complete identity. And how this works comes also with demonstrations of how it has three distinct identities of relationship to itself. The identity of value / value progression that is generating totally different individual species bodies made up of a whole bunch of different individual bodies. But they're also they're distinct, non-distinct. Nature shows us to use that word. But in other words, this is how the ancients realized it and they perfected their language because nature shows us what words to use. It is showing us, to an extent, its body of value progression, but it comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, three ways equally increasing relative, for example. Part of its identity will not juxtapose because it is too great to fit with temporary / lasting space nature, where more and more of its identity of forever nature is being made. And part of it is too finite. And part of it is this way with active relativity, where it won't mix with the rest of itself except for one way. And that is only further positive onto itself here, or our special difference. So Earth's, but as our portion of it, is forced away from here as negative value nature relationship to itself. Every identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But nature itself shows us how it is functional, how it is hyper invisible but still discernible. For example, meaning that it's what we can't name, but we can name. We have to use it in a name to speak about this. And see, they're playing games with the difference of names. Like the beginning of the Old Testament, for example, it says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that's right in the beginning of the Old Testament, before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve and their generation, and the names of their generation. No, every letter spells out a word, and every word spells out a sentence. It's the ancient gaming system. So, for example, system, CY, sees, tells the energies, mother. See, mother is the 13th letter of the English language, and there are 26 letters. It is the middle letter. And O is the 15th letter. And N becomes between it because Omega, is mother. Mother is Omega, but mother is Omega distinctly. And between them is neutrality / neutralizing, because it has three identities of relationship to itself. This is also what makes hyper-programming capable of being, and hyper-intelligence. But see, hyper-intelligence already recorded. The voice is associated with artificial intelligence, valuing lists in ways that and exceptions in exception nature fake, and or as criminal and ceaseless natures of it, criminally foreign influence rather. I'm not a lawyer, the names of the people, the sciences. So this the beginning of the Old Testament, per science, it says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. So they want to make things and keep things that appear to be debatable. You know, debatable, pretended debatable, so they could change and fake what everyone says. And including, they never stopped needing to do this, where they pretended they had integrity as the names of the people of science, a certain type of child abuse since they were kids. That's why no one ever defended our founders the way they asked. When you hit, when the only people you're only allowed to hear, like in the arts too. Oh, why did our founders have slavery? Slaves. Our founders explained that everyone was fact, true, nature, torture, extortion, and slavery to an extent. Collusion slash as everyone against themselves and others, syntactically, therefore physically. And if they tried to, or every time they tried to overcome it, it was sensed and adapted to. That's why George. This is what we were supposed to understand about James Madison's plan. They were aware of that, and so they at key locations, they made them break the rules, not just of the internationally monitored conversations, not just of the private criminal enterprises. Overt criminal enterprises and terrorists only capable of being facilitated more so by the breaching method. Never stopped having organized crimes with the like, for example, the Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices have worse than war crimes roles. Good people. But how that is state evil like that is recorded relative to this. See, everyone won't follow mandated law, even though WFSB has former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved also with a James Comey and James Comey's daughter, involved also with a Puff Daddy, or a guy who looks just like Puff Daddy at Trinity College, involved also with a Joshua Schumack, or a Joshua Stryker, and a Dean Alford. A Joshua Stryker is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me when I was a kid, now as an adult, as people involved with the government of Connecticut and people with Washington, D.C., and the World Trade Center attack in New York City, and also other states, through jobs that, well, that's not my job, like that. Oh, and then people are going to make opinions anyway. Oh, but that's what it says there, and that's what I heard. In other words, they're sticking fake things in databases. Increasingly, mayors from Wethersfield. There are intelligence families and their kids when I was a kid and then as an adult who have roles with body dumping spots, overt criminal enterprises, and proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, first force, and gun crimes roles. And Joe Ella was pretending to be against me for that on Facebook because he was planting evidences next to a park with the FBI and people associated with other countries and a former Mayor Gold. Increasingly, a former Mayor Gold and his family and conjunctions to them are involved. I never had a word of conversation with him. And his daughter pretended things into databases, pretended yelled at me to lie about what came first with people involved that were spying on, they're still spying on everyone. Increasingly, Hartford Hospital has an institute of living associated with the triages across the country and intercities, and they have rules with intelligence there. And they put fake transcripts there. And they are personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors and people with the state corrections office and judicial branch offices involved with wire crime acts and methods and roles with the use/s of such collusions that are breaching methods. These are also black, white, KKK theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, Irish theme. There's a Frankie Reese with multiple police departments and Wethersfield police involved with digital crimes with a Dean Judd and others with a Clinton correctional facility involved with Saudi attackers too, involved before and after the World Trade Center attack, interstates, with the ones inter and intra campuses. Many people from Central Connecticut State University recorded confessed people with the name DeMoro and Heather Hansen were forced to collusions also with a detective Samuda, with a girl he reportedly called with sexual things at the business office, had been calling her at the business office, and then she thought it was him when he was running away. I don't know. Increasingly, those are people that didn't go to my grammar school. My grammar school had people, and there was a guy named Mr. Burstein, who was one of the sixth grade teachers, but not my sixth grade teacher. You know, who I loved, even though God knows what people told her in the background. They've been doing this, increasingly building on the people the year before, where you'll never talk, so you'll never be able to correct the fake things, fake natures of things they're pretending. A bunch of courts, Connecticut's district court, the correction, the New Britain Superior Court, and Hartford courts also have a Rick C. Faglione involved with their family members, prosecutors and judges, involved with people involved with the other countries, and with the child abusers, leaders of kids, and a boyfriend of a daughter of a Principal Murphy when I was there. And these are people also tied to them with involved with Korea, with a Mark Violet and a Justin Kovinskas with some black KKK themed, Latino themed, and intercultural, interreligious spots, roles all along Route 175 through time, having been planting evidences at the corners of the streets there, and with exceptions exploited. And along the same ones along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. And along Route 175 in conjunctions to it and to that, like the state corrections offices. But it's intercities from the old Wethersfield founding locations all along Route 175 through Wethersfield, through Newington, and all the way to Central Connecticut State University, and all sides of it are people who have roles of the World Trade Center attack and how motivated to it. These are also people that jump into Facebook and social media that we never had classes with. They tried to pretend they're consciously shown that they need to hide things preemptively, actively, and things past as they are actually recorded. And everyone's forcing everyone to speak through others and pretending other. Like, for example, there's a Coach Hagenbar I basically never had conversation with. And I just, in other words, people, increasingly he has roles with people tied to a Mayor Gold and others with other former mayors and their family members, conjunctions to them, like their neighbors and things like that. Like a Lenny Triglia, I never saw him on a campus in my life. I only know that he sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has collusions with people tied to a former Mayor Gold and others with Route 3, conjunctions to it and to that, like Hangdog Lane, where it runs into Two-Rod Highway, is increasingly involved with multiple judges and prosecutors and their family members and mayors and other ages and natures of politicians and roles with all ages and natures of campuses, including medical campuses and fire campuses, and their families running to hide life aggressions. Increasingly, I notice that not just there are things manifest where the differences of the guilt of the interbranch families here or foreign, or of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, or the names next to the campuses, or the ground locations tied, because people are acting at other locations tied to predicate acts they're sticking in databases, which is relative to where and to how everyone so overtly pretends they have honesty, but they have dishonesty and they have delusions, framing our founders for slavery. In other words, pretending things that are debatable that are not, etc. You guys speaking about world wars, you guys don't even have the Civil War taught correctly yet. James Madison's plan forced the North and South to try to get free. They both still had roles with slavery. They both still had roles incapable of following the rules of all the different things standing, including the states, and, and what our founders directed them to get done, because there's a breaching method involved. We have to pay attention to the scientific value of the breaching method, because nature itself is showing us what's sickly distinctly against native difference, which is, even if we're not Native American, nature itself is hyper-native. If Native Americans are sickly distinctly prevented rights, we're prevented the voice for the human species body of individual bodies, how it uses difference. Excuse me. We have the same color eyes. While we have different color eyes at the same time, we have nature itself communicating to us about difference, generating it. We have the different species body. So, the Epstein list coverage is part of the cover-ups from the people I recorded increasingly on my street, interstates, and intercampuses, including private school kids involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Increasingly, people fake motivations so long, because everyone's motivations, for example, replacing what Black people's white survivors communicate, a breaching method still controlling everyone's motivations. People framing our founders saying, oh, that's the real evidence is that they own slaves. And they're saying they don't even know. The only founder we know the name of is James Madison. There are proofs that even George Washington was counter-extorted by the plural founders behind James Madison and his plan. But you guys won't even allow the extortion of George Washington, any other people. You guys won't even allow other people to use short words properly with convictions regarding the extortion of George Washington, as he had directed us to. You guys can't even, in other words, the only president / chief that we know the name of that was also a founder is James Madison. So get everyone to get ready to get corrected too, because all these sides, like when they want to have fights with, the different. I keep thinking Holocaust. I'm not talking about the Holocaust, but that too, right? The psychiatry had all sides right through World War. They had collusions together with organized crimes, with databases. This breaching method used databases since before there were computers, since before America's founders were born. It exploited the identity of relativity / hyper-relativity of nature to us replaced, not just with Black people's rights of eyes, not just with, this breaching method only allowed to unfold. It extorted countries individually grouped and together easily because it was entrenched, the same way it had only roles allowed with even slavery, while all the other, against Native Americans, against women with difference. You guys can't, in other words, the suburbs were designed for torture, extortion, slavery method. This is not debatable. And who debates it will have inherent too active, too progressive to their logic, their nature of logic, demonstration / S of the same. We have to all train vaccines. That's why they switch names into branch, because they have been collusions / S. Whole careers are kept criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. A bunch of people tied to a Brian Silver are involved criminally foreign influence involved with the Britain Spirit Court forging and switching names, and with some Black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, and people along Hangdog Lane and Two Rod Highway recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed that Brian Silver and a Brendan Leahy has roles with people with predicate acts on the corners of their campus that I don't know at all, and ones that I only know make confessions tied to them. A Leahy family has roles with their other judges and prosecutors and their family members together with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and they have something to do with their uses of those corners of the street through time. And their roles with people from Korea, people from Russia, people from Ukraine. And they're making it sound, and with everyone's neighbors and everyone next to each other. They already had collusion slash us with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news at the same time, names next to relative body don't make spots. You guys, you guys all like these serious subjects, but only if you keep them apart. And that's collusion slash S. Increasingly with the prisons too, in the same name slash S, involved with next to the state corrections offices, or just driving by it, or at it. Collusion is criminally foreign, tactically delusion is wrong. And with the names involved further with more world traits that they're predicate acts. Get me off the fake people. Help me get off the fake conversations with Connecticut's news at the same time. Like WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, fake conversations with me. WTNH planted evidences with an educator and or a parent was I think it was an educator who confessed a Lance Cuddy involved, and with others too confessed Debbie Gold. See there are black and white women judges involved with some black KKK Confederate flag theme, digital crimes, and whiting forensics with those same names like a Debbie Gold since she was a kid. And people with whiting forensics confessed also the name Lee Gold involved. And their father is increasingly involved with people tied to a JOIL, tied to record proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, first forced, and there are more involved then and now. And these are increasingly people involved with the FBI and other agencies and countries too. Ugh. So get them on paper, one name in sequence. And I want a response for what I caught them doing with the principal child abuser. And they confess people with the name Scalora are also involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity thefts and frauds, with people next to the campuses and people intercities. Get them on paper, get them off the fake conversations with me. Those are also Scalora, people interstates and internationally involved with the World Trade Center attack. And I don't know what's up with Pantano. I don't know what's up with Pantano. A whole bunch of people who had conversations with a Scalora have roles with the FBI and other agencies and foreign and domestic military. And people like that say they're their cousins, as ones with the medical act next to Harvard Hospital, with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, not legitimate intelligence. Those are people next to campuses, intercities, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. WFSB recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also, a Dr. Laura Saunders is involved with them, with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Get them the heck off the fake conversations with me, with themselves and with others. The WFSB pretended I had conversations and pretended kids are tied to doctors when they were kids that weren't at all. And as adults, get them the heck on conversation. Get them on paper. Watch how insidious. Way worse than fake news, to use the president's phrase. But there are overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in a whole bunch of different countries. There are recorded conscious uses of the differences of their guilt as a use, singular. To discern the breaching of it, we could discern it from where there are collusions that no one wants. But anyway, as like with black people's rights of eyes, and as like with our founders being slandered and their identity stolen, even through the people that are doing it. They don't even understand to an extent, and they have delusions relative to all the organized crimes and the delusions of the experts on reason through world wars, and as collusions with Afghanistan too, and cover-ups of the World Trade Center attack. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Too. Please.